Light78 Chapter 7 Fall 7 times, stand up 8. Asami knew that it wasn't the best idea to go into the jungle, where you don't know what can be in front of you. But she had to save Irish. It was her responsibility to find him and get him home to his family. It was not only the responsibility that she had, but it was free will to help, to give a hand to a fallen one. All of a sudden, among many animal sounds, she recognized one. This sound came from a big cat living in the jungle. She froze and didn't move an inch. She was afraid and stood there to listen to see if she was right about what she was thinking. There it was. This animal roared again. She realized that it couldn't be far away from her, as this big cat could run very fast. She stood there for a few seconds, and all she could think of how to get back to the meadow. She checked her pockets to find the dagger, but it wasn't there. Shit, I left it somewhere by parachute. She put her hand on her mouth when she said the last words, whispering. It was the last thing to pay attention to any of those animals. Dagger wasn't with her, and it was another bad sign. She had no protection for any of the animals. All she had were a few strings and thin air. Slowly but surely, she started to walk back in the hope that no one was after her. After a few steps, the fire alarm went off in her head when she heard the line for the third time. The roar was closer than before. In a matter of seconds, she started to run, and as fast as she could. She didn't think, she just ran for her life. Her heartbeat went to 210. Her fear and adrenaline mixed. She ran so fast that she had never run before. Survival instinct to live turned on. She had run about halfway back to the meadows. The roar became louder and louder, and finally she thought to herself, I am dead, please forgive me. She ran a few meters more, and in front of her she saw something. Are there more threats for me? She ran, and in front of her there was a kangaroo. It was quiet and big and taller than Asami. She ran, and in her adrenaline rush, nearly ran into the kangaroo. It was only like few inches that she would pass the big animal. There was one more roar in the closest distance than ever before. She ran and saw another 2 kangaroos on the front right side. She looked into one of the closest kangaroo's eyes in fear and despair and kept running. Then, all of a sudden, she heard a big noise, roars and other kinds of sounds. A fight to life and death was going on between the kangaroo and another animal. The sound was so loud and frightening that Asami couldn't move an inch. She ran and finally got to the meadow. She was gasping and her hands were shaking. In a few milliseconds, she found a dagger. She couldn't process what had just happened, and even less what was going up in the jungle. She stood there by the parachute looking into the jungle as far as she could. She didn't even realize that there were 7 more kangaroos behind her. Even if she saw them, she didn't believe that they were actually there, but they were. They were all looking into the jungle patiently. All of a sudden, two kangaroos ran out of the jungle and aligned with the other 7. Lady started to run again, and now she saw all the kangaroos that they had passed around. She hid behind them and looked at the jungle in fear, and shaking her hands even more. A black wounded panther came out from the jungle. It was roaring and looking at the kangaroos in anger. Black Panther was ready to eat them all, but first Asami, whom she had to come after. The animal roared like a cat, just much louder and angrier. Now the 6 kangaroos stand in front of Asami, mother with the baby in her bag, and another child kangaroo. Kangaroos were ready to fight, and they would beat the shit out of the Black Panther, but their aim wasn't to kill. They were in protection mode. Black Panther understood that if she went any closer, she would be attacked and killed, especially with the big open wound on her left side of her body. It looked at them quickly, and its eyes were looking for Asami's to let her know that this time she was lucky, but it couldn't find Asami's eyes. It went back into the jungle as fast as it came out, and no one would even know that it was there. Asami's whole body was shaking from all the thrill that she was in minutes ago. She wasn't sure that it wouldn't come back later with some friends. No, that she just erased from her memory because she had to keep going somewhere safe. Right now, she was safe with these miracle kangaroos, but who knows how long they will be here. 3 of the kangaroos ran back into the jungle, and Asami stood there to catch her breath. Her heartbeat started to go back to normal, and all the adrenaline rush was nearly gone. One of the child kangaroos came up to her just to see what she was. It looked like it had never seen a human being. Asami tried to palm the kangaroo, but it jumped back to her mama in fright. After about 10 minutes, she could see that 3 kangaroos were getting something out of the jungle. She couldn't believe her eyes. That was the big kangaroo who fought the Black Panther in the first place. That was the kangaroo who saved her life. If it were not there, if not one of these kangaroos were here, she would be eaten alive. She started to run up to the dead kangaroo and wanted to give a hand, but she saw that others were not welcoming anymore. She went back to the place where she was before and stood there a little bit apart from all of the kangaroos. They pulled their brother into the meadow a few meters in. It lay there in the long grass so peacefully, like it was sleeping. There was so much sadness in her eyes about the death of the kangaroo. The mama kangaroo went up to the strong father, who was now sleeping dead on the grass. Mama's eyes were full of tears and despair. It was the love of her life. Father Kangaroo was who took care of her and her children, and not only that, he was the spirit of the whole tribe. Mama Kangaroo couldn't hold her anger, and she looked at Asami and wanted to beat her. As she was looking at her, the other 2 male kangaroos saw it and sensed what was going to happen. They rushed to her and stopped her from running towards Asami. The adrenaline rush came back, and she was in fear and grief at the same time. Asami looked into the other kangaroo's eyes and showed that she was so sorry for what just happened. Although she didn't need to do that. She could have just walked away, but she stood there and watched kangaroos from a distance. She felt something magical there. How all kangaroos cared so much for their brother. They were like humans. They risked their lives and brought them out from the jungle, where other panthers could have been waiting for them. All of them stood around the last brother, father and love of Kangaroo's life. Each one of them said goodbye to him in their language. Mama was crying. Her baby took his head out of Mama's bag and looked at her, and then at his father. Baby Kangaroo started to cry as well. This emotional and spiritual moment was enough for Asami. She couldn't hold her tears anymore and started to cry for her father, for her left mama and baby, and for Irish, who was still out there in the jungle. She could feel every bit of the sorrow and grief. The same 3 dark blue birds flew around them and sang their songs like showing their love to the kangaroo. She felt like the father's spirit had left the body and gone to another world. This whole scene with kangaroos standing around looked like she was in a kind of different world. It looked like they were people, and for a few seconds she thought that they were humans. It was a real funeral in front of her, which she hadn't experienced in her life. She stood there for a while and realized that she should be going. Although it was safer with kangaroos before, it isn't anymore. She looked at the kangaroos and in gratitude silently walked away.